What is up? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nathaniel and today I'm going to show you how to do a 2-pack, 2-tone paint job for under 2K. In this video, I have sanded, prepped, painted and put back together this 1986 Landcruiser Sahara in less than 6 days. The only help being from the man at the spray booth that gave me a hand with things and my friend Andrew that let me borrow his garage to sand this car in. So all up, the paint cost around $900. That means 2 litres of Capri Blue, which is from the 40 series Land Cruisers, and 2 litres of the original white that came on this truck. And that also includes the reducer needed for that paint and a 7.5 litre pack of clear coat, of which I think we used about 6 litres, so I've still got a little bit left over. I spent about $100 on tape, sanding discs and a few other little bits and pieces, and the cost to hire the booth was around $500. However, I offered the bloke at the booth $1,000 if he would help me out, and that was the best money I could have spent. There is no way I could have achieved this result without him, so I was very lucky to have his experience and assistance with this job. I actually sprayed my first generation 4Runner with him and he just let me go nuts doing it myself, and the results of that were better than how it looked initially, but it was still very below par. Having a previous experience with this as well as Raptor coating our bus, I decided that having some experience on board would actually be very ideal. But the idea seems simple enough, right? Sand a car, wrap the car, prime the car, paint the car. So whilst you might think you have a clue about how to paint cars, you probably don't. Fortunately for you watching this, I wrote down a list of things that I needed but didn't have or think of. So the first thing was a tack cloth. When you do a coat of paint, some little bits of overspray come off and don't always stick to the car itself and become little bits of dried paint dust. Using a tack cloth in between coats helps you pick up these little bits and gives you a very smooth finish. Having some spare 800 grit sandpaper will really help. Trust me, you'll need it. Little things happen when you get to the booth, like a little bit of bird crap or some primer paint spots. It's really good to just have a little bit of an additional 800 grit sandpaper lying around. Paint strainers. When you pour paint into the spray gun using a strainer, it gets out little bits of dust that would have otherwise spit out through the nozzle and into the gun, leaving behind a bumpy texture. Windscreen tape. This tape lifts up the edges of the rubbers so that you can get paint into the gaps without having to remove parts of the windows. For example, around the windscreen, that's where we mainly use this. It's quite expensive, but it's well worth it and it saves you having to take out the whole thing. Tape in general, get a few extra rolls, you'll need more than you think. Primer, again, you'll need more than you think. Moving to the end of this job was nothing without its flaws. Still a very good result for under 2,000 Australian dollars, but there are a few things that I messed up. So as we painted the blue first with the back of it open, I did not think about the plastic that would get caught up inside when I closed this down. So unfortunately the plastic, as you can see, has sort of stuck to this paint that was previously drying, and it's sort of baked into the paint a little bit, but I'm not too fussed about it. It's on the inside of the car, you can't really tell, so it's not the biggest deal, but a tiny bit of tape just taped to the inside of this would have prevented that and it would have been pretty much perfect. Bill Hirsch. As amazing as this miracle paint is, I ran into an issue on this job. I had a few rust spots come up during the sanding process, of which I sanded back to bare metal and then just anti-rust paint over top of them to prevent it coming back. Unfortunately, wherever I did this, crow-footed, which is where the paint reacts to the previous coat and cracks and peels. I noticed this when we were priming the car with undercoat and had to quickly sand back those areas, but unfortunately, because I was ripping off industrial paint, I had to use a very rough grit sandpaper and this resulted in some rough areas underneath the paint. The bonnet scoop. I was reaching to try and make this bonnet scoop the night before I was booked into the spray booth. The hood scoop was pretty rugged and rusty and I definitely rushed the whole process, and this resulted in a very terribly cracked and terrible fiberglass top along the hood scoop. In all fairness, it looked like garbage beforehand with old silicone just rammed in there, so I'm thinking I'll try to find a metal bracket of some kind and just pop rivet that over top of these cracks here. But yeah, it's very terribly tapered out and unfortunately it just cracked underneath. So I'm just gonna leave it for now until I can have some time to fix that properly. Now, another thing that I messed up, and truthfully, I didn't even know about this, was high filling. As far as I know, this is a gap filling paint that can be sanded over to achieve a perfect finish and fill those tiny little gaps in between the layers that you've sanded. I didn't use this, and so there are some little spots where the sandpaper sort of ripped out a little bit more, but again, it's better than what it was, so I'm happy with that. If you can consider all of those things that I missed and much more, then the first step is to decide, is this even a good idea? Do you have 2 weeks of your life blocked out to complete this work? As I did this in 6 days, and it was an absolute stretch. Second of all, do you have a covered area to work underneath in case the weather turns bad? Because again, I did not, and had to call up my friend Andrew and beg him to let me use his shed. And thankfully he did, so that was very nice of him. Another thing to take into consideration is, am I changing the car enough to make all of this work worth it? Patina cars are pretty difficult to come by, and a full respray is a lot of work. Some old rigs can come up really nicely with a wet sand, a buff and a polish, and a bit of wax. This is usually only worth doing if you've got really bad paint, rust, dents, and other things. In my case, I couldn't clean the car properly because the stickers would come off with a water blaster. The stickers were also missing on half the car because I had to replace 2 of the panels on that side. So if you've evaluated your life decisions and you still think this is a good idea, then crack into getting the flares, mud flaps, snorkel, side steps, door cards out, and take out the door handles and key barrels as well. Fix up the broken parts of the flares with fiberglass, silicone, and some tape. Buy a new bonnet, sand it back, rust convert it, paint it with anti-corrosive paint, silicone around the hood scoop, and try and fiberglass out that bit as best you can. Remove the stickers by using a water blaster followed by a caramel wheel. Next, find a shed because there's probably torrential rain inbound. And then, sand like mad, starting at 120 grit and working your way down to 600. This takes a lot of time, so definitely allocate extra time. Fix any rust that you find along the way. Prime it all up with a rattle can, tape the edges of your rig to make it slightly easier for when you get to the spray booth. Learn the mixing ratios of your paint and make sure that you have enough to complete the job. Ask as many questions as you need to at the paint shop. Just ask the guys, they usually know. Drive to the paint booth in a barely legal car. Remove your lights and anything else that you don't want the paint to get on. Once you've got to the booth, scuff the whole car with an 800 grit scouring pad. This stuff kind of looks like steel wool and it's very thin. Wipe the whole car down with wax and grease remover. Use a tack cloth alongside compressed air and then prime up any spots of bare metal. Repeat this process once the primer has dried, as overspray can leave dust on your surface. Repeat this process between layers and go around it with the air compressor. Spray your two-tone color first, so in this instance we went with the blue, and give that 3 to 4 coats of paint or until it fills out nicely. Bake this for 30 minutes in between sprays and then run a soft back tape along the line that you want to keep blue. Add more tape underneath this and apply a decent amount of pressure to stop the white paint from dripping underneath. You'll get a bad line if it's not stuck down properly, so make sure that you take some time with this. So the reason that we did the blue first was so that we could just tape around this and then hang the paper down, then we didn't have to worry about taping it up. So after covering the blue where you want it and repeating the same process with the tack cloth and compressed air, starting from the roof down, spray the white. With lighter colors, use as much paint as you can. This will give you the highest chance of getting a good result. Baking the car for about 5 to 10 minutes in between coats and leaving it for a good 30 minutes to an hour on the last coat. Once that's dry, remove the tape covering the first color. Tack cloth any little flakes of paint and be sure to tape down all the loose plastic or tape that may have come loose. Add a thin layer of clear coat to begin with and then let that bake on and then nuke it with a heavy layer of clear coat. We use 6 liters of the 7.5 liter kit and I think it looks pretty nice. Allow all of that to bake for about an hour or 2 and then you can start unwrapping your creation and revealing the paint job that you've just created. After that, drive it home and try not to run over any puddles or get caught in the rain. Keep it under cover for 24 hours and then you can start putting it all back together. A few little tricks I did for this was to put all my nuts and bolts from each section of the car into little snap lock bags and then labeling them. Putting all of these different bags with all the little individual pieces into one big box made putting the car back together 1,000 times easier, and I would highly recommend it. Those snap lock bags were the best thing I bought for this project. I also put the mud flaps and other larger pieces that we took off into a washing basket, and I will use this opportunity to fix the door cards, key barrels, and anything else that I come across whilst I'm putting it all back together. So there you have it, how to do a 2-pack, 2-tone paint job for under 2K. If you like this video and you want to see the adventures and other mischief that we get up to in this rig, then be sure to follow my Instagram at Nathaniel's Life. Also, if you do paint your car using this process, please send me a photo of your creation. I always love seeing them. And if you don't feel like being that detailed with your paint job, then check out my channel to see how we Raptor coated a bus with a $50 spray gun. Also, the shirt that I was wearing in this video is one of my own design. It's got a Velociraptor riding a skateboard on the front, and it's got the words, "Are we having fun yet?" on the back for all your adventures, mischief, mechanical work, and anything else that you do. If you want to support the videos I make and need a shirt specifically for creating stuff, then head along to mahimedia.au and check out the range of t-shirts that I've got available. Whilst you're there, check out my freelance media. I film weddings, real estate, and drone stuff, and if you're in need of any of that, I'm based in New South Wales, Australia currently, but open to work worldwide. Other than that, get out there and start painting your rig. I hope you learned something from this video. I hope there's some tips and tricks of mistakes that I made that help you paint your rig as beautifully as you can. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe if you want to, like if you liked it, and yeah, that's all from me. Stay safe, stay stoked, and stay stupid. Until next time, I'm Nathaniel. Bye.